I wanted to talk with you a few minutes today to let you know where the state is in the natural resource damage assessment process. I wanted to talk with you just general overview of what that is, where we are, where we're going, and ask you for some of your help, some assistance on getting some of this information out to our Gulf Coast citizens. The natural resource damage assessment process is set forth in the Oil Pollution Act. And that is the process where we determine what's been hurt, the assessment, what is it going to take to fix it, restoration projects, and what is it going to cost? What are the restoration projects going to cost? And that would be damages that the responsible party, BP, would be required to pay. Where we are right now in Mississippi, we are in the assessment, what has been hurt, what has been impacted. We're in the assessment process. In that process, we are using our Mississippi experts on the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico marine life. And we're blessed in Mississippi to have some of the leading experts on the Gulf of Mexico and marine life and aquatic life right here in Mississippi. So we're fortunate that we're able to use them and that expertise in the technical working groups to assess what impacts we have seen in our Gulf of Mexico, in our Mississippi waters, and on our shorelines. Now, the part of the process in assessing what has been impacted, we are working with our sister Gulf states and two of the federal agencies who are the lead federal agencies under this NRDA process. That is the Department of Interior and NOAA. The 5 states and these 2 federal agencies are working together to establish common methodology to assess what's been hurt in our environment. We're also working together then to look to see what will it take to fix or restore what has been impacted. We are still in the assessment phase at this time, and we will continue to work through the assessment until the scientific community, our experts, tell us that work is complete. One thing about this NRDA process, it is a legal process. It is set out in the Oil Pollution Act, but its outcome is based on the science. It's based on what the science tells us. So we're working very carefully with our experts, with our marine biologists, our biologists and environmental scientists to look and give them time to look to see what the impacts are. I'm often asked, and have already been asked this morning and probably will be asked again, Trudy, how long do you think this process is going to take? It's premature for me to stand before you today and give you a timeline for this process to conclude. And the reason is we've got to let the science dictate that. We know that we want to go through several cycles, seasons, to see what impacts, if any, that we have to our various forms of our ecology that we're studying. The technical working groups, they focus on everything that you would imagine. We're focusing on finfish, shellfish. We're focusing on aquatic life, submerged vegetation, our marsh grasses, shoreline, water columns, our birds, so and much, much more. So it's a lot of work that is going on as we build our case. As trustee of the natural resource of our state, our job at the Department of Environmental Quality is to make sure that Mississippi is made whole from the impacts of the oil spill. Now, all of you have heard me say throughout this event, as we got later into the event, that Mississippi, we dodged a bullet. The oil spill could have been a lot worse. We could have had a lot more impacts than we saw. But nevertheless, we did have some impact. And so our job is to assess that and see what is needed to restore our environment. Now, that's kind of where we are and where we're headed. There's some work that's already has occurred as a result of this NRDA process. Many of you even reported on some of the activities that have taken place so far. There were several emergency projects that were funded by BP to address some earlier concerns from the oil spill. You might recall the sea turtle nesting removal effort. We also have had some restoration to some of our submerged vegetation that was scored as a result of so much boat traffic during the oil spill putting out boom. We have also had some restoration of some of our marsh grasses. And in particular in Mississippi, one of the emergency projects that we played a large role in was the flooding of acreage in the Mississippi Delta, which allowed for migratory birds to actually stay longer in the Delta and not come down to potentially oil impacted areas in the marshes. And there is scientific evidence to document that actually worked. There was some question about would it be successful, but that actually worked. But that's some of the work that has gone on so far under the NRDA process. We're going to continue to go through this process, work with our states, and work to make sure that we make Mississippi whole. Now, when I started the discussion, I said we're going to talk about where we are, where we're headed, and then what I'm asking you to do today, and why I ask you to be here today. We are starting off our public involvement, community input. It's important to me as an individual to be sure that we get the input from the citizens of the Gulf Coast on the impacts, and for them to be able to participate meaningfully in this NRDA process, we want to make sure that they are aware of what this process is and how they can have a role and how I want them to have a role. And so we're holding a public meeting on Monday, November the 22nd. It will be at the USM Long Beach campus at the Fleming Education Center. It's going to be from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And we invite the public. We hope we have a great turnout. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about in more detail than I've gone into this morning, obviously, about this process and how the community, how the public can be involved. So I would appreciate your assistance in helping us get that word out, and hope that all of you can be there as well. Department of Environmental Quality will be there. We will also have representatives from NOAA who will be there, and it will just be a good opportunity, a question-answer session for the community to learn more about this process. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have that are related to this NRDA process.
Does this include the barrier islands that y'all doing assessments on?
Yes, it does include the barrier islands. Now, you know, I've caught myself, and we all caught ourselves talking about our barrier islands, and so, but we're working with the National Park Service, who is a participant in this process, and we're working with DOI. But yes, the assessment will include the barrier islands.
Does DEQ have extra staff as it relates to this process on payroll, if you will, or being funded by BP or anything? Tell me about who's doing the work for you guys.
Excellent question. We do not have we have not employed extra staff. We do have our staff. We have several members of our staff who have been reassigned to the NRDA work. The Oil Pollution Act's been around since 1989, and DEQ is the lead agency under that act. And so we've been involved in inland oil spills since '89 under this process. So we had key people already trained in the NRDA process. This is obviously a lot larger than even the Genesis oil spill on the Leaf River. So we have brought in outside expertise through contracts, but we've also, what we've done is to partner, as I was saying, with our institutions of our higher learning to fill in the areas of expertise. So it's truly a Team Mississippi effort in establishing our claim.
When did the assessment actually begin? Was there like a start date for the actual NRDA assessment process?
The assessment, the question was, when did the actual assessment begin? It began just a few days after April the 20th. As a matter of fact, the first step in the process was to take a snapshot. Take a snapshot of what our ecology looked like before we had any impacts. So we did our snapshot, our baseline sampling immediately after the oil spill. And then it has continued, sampling has continued for the NRDA process throughout the event. We're now really in earnest doing our NRDA sampling. And I know we've invited anyone that would like to go out with us today. We're going to demonstrate the sampling that we are doing for this process. I'm going to follow up on your question before. You asked about the funding. The responsible party, BP, is funding the NRDA efforts for all the states and the federal agencies. That's a part of the Oil Pollution Act. So this is not costing the taxpayers any money. This is being funded by BP, and we expect that funding to continue throughout this process.
BP obviously has a huge stake in the outcome of this whole process. Do they, on the other hand, do they have their own team of scientists doing the same kind of assessment, and then the two sides get together and kind of hash it out in court?
You just summed it up. That's what we're doing. I mean, we're making our legal case. What we're doing is establishing a claim that could stand up in court. Now, all the parties, and I'm not speaking for BP, but I'm repeating what I've heard representatives of BP say. We want to avoid going to court. We want to avoid a long, drawn-out process. We're going to move it as efficiently as possible, but yet let the science go through its process that's required. So we have good science. But yes, they have their team of experts, and some of the things that we're working on, we don't work on together, but we work to see if we can use the same methods so that maybe the outcomes will be somewhat, we can agree upon the outcomes to avoid some of that you just described.
It seems like the damage assessment, though it takes a long time, is fairly straightforward. You've got a certain methodology, you assess the damage, but the compensation for that, let me use the example of a pelican. A pelican that's dead, you can mark down, okay, we've got a dead pelican. What's a pelican worth?
Well, that is part of the negotiations that we'll have. You've got also what's the value of the pelican, what's the value of the loss of the pelican. One component is the loss of the natural resource. So there will be methodology that the states and the federal agencies will develop that will put a dollar figure on that. But this process is more, though, than just counting the number of pelicans we lost and the number of dolphins we lost and multiplying it by some factor and coming. It's more to the process than just that, but that is definitely a part of the process. One question: will the public, if they have personal claims at public meetings, will that be discussed? No, the question is, is the public meeting for individual claims? And no, it's not. This is not a public meeting to address individual claims or any economic losses. This is not a BP public meeting. This will be to discuss this NRDA process and evaluating the impacts to our Gulf Coast and our environment.
About how much has been spent to date on doing the assessment?
Just under $1 million probably to date.
Is that just in Mississippi, or?
That's just in Mississippi.
Okay.
Any more questions from the press?
Just one quick one. I'm going to use an example of the beach in Harrison County. Obviously, it's been through these, over the months since the spill was inundated with oil, tar balls and so forth. BP had crews out there cleaning it up as they washed in. So how would you assess that damage? They might maintain, well, we were out there, we cleaned it up, we've already restored it. Is that accurate, or would?
Well, that will be part of the equation. That's part of the discussion. Because we had the tar balls come in, they were picked up, and that was a good thing. They weren't out there long.
Right.
But the fact that they were out there at all is a damage. But we are fortunate that we were not inundated in our marshes and our sensitive areas where, not having a large claim in some of these areas of concern is a good thing because it means we weren't hurt. So it's but there is a way that you calculate that. And